Hey everyone, Vortican here. Some people were requesting a leveling guide using the Mercenary only build, so I'm making this video. Before anyone jumps ahead to the timestamps, please listen for a few minutes, because I have to explain a few caveats with the build progression and just, some problems that you may have with the build itself. This is not a meta build, first of all. You're not going to get the maps in 2 hours and 40 minutes like some of the speedrunners that have knowledge of most of the layouts and stuff. I feel like if you were probably one of those speedrunners playing this build, you probably could get like 4 hours, maybe a little bit less. There is some uncontrollable RNG, and it may take a while to find a good mercenary to replace your current one sometimes, and you'll just have to deal with having a subpar one for maybe, 3 or 4 zones, maybe even more. Act 1 and 2 are, in particular, are just a bit of a slog. They can take quite a while. I think while I was making my run in order to make this guide, I did 2 runs in order to make this guide. The second time I did the run, I got absolutely screwed with the RNG on the Mercs, and it took me around 42 minutes to do Act 1. And on a fast build, you're talking 15 to 20 minutes for Act 1. So, there's that. It starts to speed up rapidly as you get further into the game because you're able to keep a low level merc for longer, just because levels matter less and less as you get to a higher level. That's just how PoE works. But in the early game, levels on a merc matter a lot, and that, because that means their life pool, their increases to damage, maybe some sort of utility they might have in their hidden trees or whatever, right? So the Merc is going to feel a lot worse to drag on for a long time compared to when you get to like Act 7, 8, 9. You might be able to keep a Merc for like 10 zones without even feeling like they're getting weaker. But once you get past Acts 1 and 2 and you get into Solaris Temple 2, then the build will start feeling pretty good. The second thing that I want to say is that this build may not even work after 3.6. If they completely remove mercenaries, then the build's not even playable. And if they change the ability to use them while leveling, like they make it so mercenaries only appear in Act 6, or they make it so, I don't know, mercenaries don't even appear until maps, then you're just shit out of luck, right? Like you can't you can't really do anything. So that's just the other thing. If they did a change where mercenaries leveled with you, but they were rarer, then you could probably still do this build. You just have to find your first mercenary and then let it level with you until you find another mercenary, and so on and so forth. So that would be the hopeful change that they do, but that would be a more difficult change for them to implement, right? So probably not happening. With that said, let's get into the guide. So first of all, I want to discuss the POB and the trees I've created along with the item sets that go along with them. So I have made this POB that has level 1 to 27. I might actually shrink this down when I post it just because it's a little bit confusing. Basically, it's just grabbing all aura nodes as you go. I added some skills that you should end up having around, level 27. We got our 28 to 23, and we also got associated trees with the given stuff that you should have by this point. I've added notes, and if you follow these notes along, you will probably progress just fine. I'm hopeful I didn't miss anything. Like I said, I ran through the entire game 2 times while writing this guide with this build in order to try not to miss anything. In Act 2, I started writing areas that you can grind for a new mercenary that I found particularly good. And in the specifically Act 2, I wrote down a list of things that you would want to exile. So you always want to exile int and strength int, in my opinion. Strength int, it's all right, but it's just not good enough. And then int is never good for leveling, in my opinion. Dex int would be your next best one, unless you really want to use a blade ambusher to level. Then you'd want to go strength, These guys are just incredibly tanky. A lot of them get endurance charges and stuff. However, they do have two good mercs, which is the Earthshaker and the Eruptor. I will go over these mercs in a little bit. And then there's Strength Dex. This one specifically has the Combatant, and it also has the Swiftblade. I didn't list that here, though, because I don't know if the Swiftblade's good for leveling, but it might be very good for bossing. I have never tested it, but because it has Val Double Strike and creates a bunch of clones, it might be very good for bossing. But yeah, throughout this guide, whenever you see yellow, that's probably some sort of like area that you can grind in order to find a new merc that I thought was particularly good. Act 4, for instance, does not have a good area to grind, so hopefully you don't get screwed in Act 4. You can grind the aqueduct area, whatever the hell it's called. That's your best bet, but then you would have to carry that guy all the way through. Luckily, you get Flame Link in this act, so it would help with damage, and you also get your Minefield support after Malachi, so once you're done. But other than that, most of them have some sort of area that I thought you could grind. In particular, Act 5, the ossuary has to be one of the best places to grind. It's incredibly small. You might have to run through the whole thing, but it takes like 10 seconds every time to check what merc's in there, and then you get a lot of stuff. Red is something that I highly recommend you do. Green is something that you should do. This is just like me highlighting, hey, you should definitely do this at this point. And then like this, I just highlighted green just to tell you that I guess just to make sure it's a decent item that you're putting the Temple of Solaris craft on. And this is definitely the order you probably want to do them in. Rings and amulets are the same priority, and the reason for this is because rings and amulets can go between all mercs. If you are using any merc that has attacks, you can swap your rings that you crafted added damage to attacks on. You can swap your amulets that have added damage to attacks. I do recommend sticking to Rangers, Kineticist. So the Rangers would be the Dex characters. The Kineticist would be the Strength, Dex, Int character. And then the Combatant. However, like I said, the Eruptor and Earthshaker could work. But the reason for this is because I guess you could make the Eruptor, the Strength work with what I'm about to say. If you find Strength Dex gloves, it will work between all of those classes. The Strength class can wear Strength Dex. The Strength Dex class can wear Strength Dex. The Dex class can wear Strength Dex, and the Kineticist, which is all of them, can wear it as well. So that's why you would do gloves as your next one. If you have a good pair of gloves, you don't have to worry about this as much as if you're not swapping between each class constantly. Like if you're just focusing, like I did typically, on Rangers while leveling, then you can just grab a Dex pair of gloves, Dex Int, Dex Strength, or Dex, and they will work also on a Kineticist once you get to maps. And then finally, weapon. Okay, so that's something I wanted to talk about there. Pyroclast Mine in Act 3, you have to kill Gravitius in the Ebony Barracks. If you don't, you won't be able to grab this, I'm pretty sure, until Act 6, where you do the Lily thing. I would recommend using it the instant you can get it, just because it gives added damage. However, your mines, unless you have this node, mines cannot be damaged, will be able to be destroyed by enemies with AoE attacks or whatever. So just something to remember. However, this isn't a huge deal early on because you can just throw down your decoy totem. Do I even have... Yeah, decoy totem. And then you can just spam Pyroclast Mines on the enemy. Especially if they're melee, they'll just stand in the same spot hitting the decoy totem. And you can put your Pyroclast Mines down, and then your Merc will just keep getting that added damage from the skill. I'll actually make sure to add some pictures of the skills I'm talking about too, just so that people can see them without me having to just like hover over them the entire time. Back to the notes. Continuing on, let's see. Act 5, again, I have a note there. Act 10, I'm at Act 6, we got some notes. Act 7, I wanted to point out here, Kineticist starts feeling decent at this point in Act 7. So I found a Kineticist with specific skills, and it starts to feel good around Act 7. I managed to find one, and I added a note in the tower. However, in the tower, it felt very, very bad. I had to switch. I had to make sure I was running precision, which meant at the time that I had to drop, I think, vitality in order for it to have precision. And vitality is just nice to have when there's dots on the ground, so you don't die as fast. But if you really want, you can drop vitality. By the way, I just think it keeps your mercs alive for longer. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Kineticist feels pretty bad early on. Around Act 7 is when it starts to feel good. And I'll go over builds for the mercs soon. So anyways, continuing on, we got some stuff for Act 8. And this is just when your build kind of is like done for the most part, going into maps. Like Act 8 is where you're going to like getting your map build. As for Arrogance, I should say you can put Vitality, Clarity, Precision on your life, but it'll take a huge hit early. I would recommend doing this maybe early maps. If you have maybe 3,000%, I'm at 3,000 unreserved health, then you could put Clarity and Vitality on your life. And then precision can stay on your mana, for instance, and you'll still have like 2,500, 2,400 life, which is all right going into maps. Because you're playing a build that just moves around a ton and doesn't actually stand there and attack, it's all right. But this is up to you. The only reason you would add Arrogance is so that you can add Anger into your build for a little bit of extra damage, but you don't have to do it early. You could always save this for much later in mapping. 9 and 10, there really is nothing to talk about because this is just kind of the end of the build. Like you just start rushing. Like after you get to Act 7, you just start rushing. You just get your, like you find a Kineticist or you find a good Thunderquiver or a good Manyshot, and you just start go, 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 go. I think the last 4 acts took me around 30 or 40 minutes because it was just go, go, go. If you get a particularly good Manyshot in Act 7 and then another good one like in Act 9, you'll just go all the way to maps without any need to stop. Or the same goes with Kineticist. You find a good Kineticist here and then you find another good one in Act 9, you're just good to go. But anyways, now that you're done campaign, we're moving on to maps. I listed a bunch of things that you should just start doing. I did this as a solo self-found, so I just kind of listed stuff, like can be farmed with cards. But if you're playing this in Trade League, by all means, don't worry about grinding lab. Just buy the item. It will save you a ton of time. I still gotta add the list of Merc gear down below. In fact, I'll probably just add it and then clip it into this video here. You need to find strength really bad in this build. Typically, when you're leveling, you may end up having to grab physique or beef. And then sometimes you actually need like some dex, so you might need alacrity, but that's very unlikely. So just remember these are here. If your like flame link is just like, hey, you don't have enough strength or whatever, just quickly grab one of these and it will solve your strength, and you can get rid of it later when you get some better gear. Typically, you're going to need to do Blight early if you're doing solo self-found, just so you can get the oils for your Merc. You're also going to need to do Delirium so that you can get the small cluster for mana reservation. And then you're going to need to do probably essences so you can get some zeals to craft some decent early uh, gear for your mercs. And what else? That's probably about the main things you have to focus on. I did Harbinger a lot so I could get nulls. Um, and then after that, I think Jun, you'd have to do Jun once you want to get the fire res gear that is really good. So, and I'll explain that later. And in fact, I'll add a section for this down there. So, my mercs that I recommend while leveling. Manyshot. Again, I'll go over the skills you want to look for later, but Manyshot. I think this is the best bosser in the campaign for sure. Probably end game as well. I think this might actually be able to melt Ubers. Thunderquiver, pretty decent. I actually used it a lot in my last run, and I started really liking it, specifically with certain skills. Again, I'll go over them soon. Sniper, you is particularly good. For the most part, it's a little bit finicky. I'll explain later. But you always have to watch out for brutality. This character can have brutality, which I will show a picture of now. Basically, brutality can make it so you do no elemental damage and no chaos damage, which means all the elemental damage that you're giving to the sniper literally does nothing. Kineticist, this by far seems to be the best mapper. Once you get some stuff on it, you can just literally go through a map in like 20 seconds or to like a minute. You'll be done a strand, and you'll outrun Delirium no problem, which is obviously not a good thing, but my point is it's very, very good at mapping. Eruptor and Earthshaker, I'll go over these a little bit later. I did not play with them a whole ton, but they can work pretty well during the campaign plus early maps. Combatant, this one's just good early in the campaign. If you find one with Static Strike, again, I'll explain this in the next section.
All right, I'm going to use paint.net here just to explain the mercs, just because it's going to be easiest this way. But basically, I just grabbed the mercs from the wiki, and it has the main skills that they always have, the secondary skills, and the tertiary skills. And so for Sniper, you want to 100% have Shrapnel Ballista. This is required in order to use this merc. This is your single target skill. You literally, the way you force the merc to use it is by recalling them into the enemy you want them to use it on. It's a little bit annoying, but as long as they don't have dash or blink arrow, they will stay on top of the enemy and keep summoning these whenever they run out. You just have to be careful in the earlier acts where your merc can actually, die easily. But typically with a rare, you'll just need to summon the Shrapnel Ballistas once. After that, in my opinion, Split Arrow is probably their best clear skill, especially if you get Pierce on it or Chain. Barrage Volley Fire is fine, and I imagine Greater Split Arrow is also probably fine. This probably has a cooldown though, so if you get Greater Split Arrow and you have Shrapnel Ballista, they might just stand around, in which case you'd probably want Frenzy. But I'll get to the tertiary in a second. Tornado Shot I have never seen spawn without Arrow Nova, which makes the skill absolutely useless. Like it literally just misses nonstop. So I don't like this skill. Rain of Arrows of Saturation I have not liked either. And then Puncture, kind of obvious. It's just a bleed skill. Don't really want it. And Siege Ballista Troarthus, you'd think would be amazing. I actually used it in my original run. I actually really liked it. It blew up Val Oversoul or something, but it now just seems to miss. Like it just doesn't hit at all. I don't know what happened to it. But yeah, the Merc will just summon it and it'll just miss. Even if the enemy is just standing still. So I don't recommend this skill. If you get it in Act 1, the enemies are probably slow enough or something that
hits, but I don't know. Tertiary skills. You do not want blink arrow or dash. Do not get these. These basically will make your Merc waste attack time whenever an enemy gets near them. They will always use one of these attacks, or one of these abilities, whenever an enemy gets near them. And it's really annoying when you're trying to put the Merc underneath an enemy to summon their shrapnel ballistas. They might just blink arrow away instantly and not summon the shrapnel ballistas. So if you can, you want to avoid those. However, great if you could get Grace and Haste on the same Merc, that would be amazing. However, Frenzy is always nice. Frenzy charges from attacking, obviously good. And like I said, if Greater Split Arrow has a cooldown, then Frenzy would be quite good. All right, for the Manyshot, which is one of my favorite Mercs, you are going to want Val Ice Shot and either Icicle Rain, which is the main bread and butter clear skill for like mobbing. Val Ice Shot's your bossing skill, or you'll want Mirror Arrow. You always want Val Ice Shot so that it's a good bosser, because it's still all right at clearing packs, and you don't want Frigid Fork Shot because it just never hits. Like, I'm gonna be honest, this seems like a really cool skill, but it just doesn't hit. For tertiary abilities, you're gonna want Hatred or Frost Bomb. Frost Bomb is better than Hatred. I actually should do these in order. You're gonna want Grace first of all, then Frost Bomb, then Hatred. Again, you don't want the movement abilities. That makes them dash around like an idiot, and it's really stupid. Mirror Arrow is fine because it doesn't make your character hit that move. And in fact, one small thing about Mirror Arrow is that it seems to block dash. So if you have Mirror Arrow, your Merc will use Mirror Arrow and never dash. It seems like that, but I don't have a ton of testing with that. So Mirror Arrow will make it so dash just doesn't go off. I think. So that's it for Manyshot. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over Thunderquiver, who has particularly one good skill that I like, which is Storm Rain. This skill is like the one that you want, and then you do not want Galvanic Arrow. You prefer to just have either Greater Lightning Arrow or Val Lightning Arrow. One of these two will be best, and Storm Arrow is basically going to be your single target. Val Lightning Arrow is pretty good for just clearing, and same as Greater Lightning Arrow. They're both really good for clearing. Galvanic Arrow, though, especially if your Merc has a movement ability, is really bad because they will stand too far away for it to hit. They will literally stand out of range and keep attacking with Galvanic Arrow, and it will just keep missing. So I just say, if they have Galvanic Arrow, you better pray to God they don't have Blink Arrow or Dash, or you just don't take them. That it's really bad. For the secondaries, or I guess the tertiary abilities, Wrath, very good. Precision, at least it's not a movement ability. But Tarthian Agility, very, very good. If they have this, it gives increased action speed, which obviously means they attack faster, and it actually, I think, affects you as well. So, very good ability. If they have Wrath, Tarthian Agility, Storm Rain, and Val Lightning Arrow, they're a very good Merc. Very, very good Merc. All right, moving on. All right, Kineticist. Overall, very good character. You never, ever want Kinetic Bolt unless it is your main skill. So if you have Kinetic Bolt plus Barrage, I guess it works. I used this for quite a while on my main character that I made my video with. However, the skill you actually want, you absolutely want Kinetic Blast of Clustering. But if you have Kinetic Bolt, it will never use Kinetic Blast of Clustering. So you got to be careful about that. You do not want Kinetic Bolt if you want clustering. Greater Kinetic Blast of Clustering that's fine to have with that, and Barrage. I've actually never even seen a Power Siphon one, I don't think. So yeah. Uh, Flame Dash is fine. It seems to almost never use this, if it even does. Um, Haste, obviously very good. However, you're probably going to be running your own haste to override this anyway. Inspiring Cry, very nice for them getting a little bit of extra damage. Never want Frostblink. They will just randomly use this to either dash into something and kill themselves, or they will just use it and stop attacking. You do not want Frostblink. Frostblink is yeah. So Flame Dash is fine. Yeah. That's Kineticist. All right. Earthshaker. This one I used a little while in maps. I don't particularly remember it super well. However, Sunder of Tarthus was very good. I also had Earthquake of Amplification. Um, it's probably really good once you get to the end game. And then I don't know if anything overrides Sunder of Tarthus, so I would probably try to stick with this. Tectonic Cascade sounds good, and Val Ground Slam sounds good. I'm worried that Ground Slam might beat the Sunder. And with the Sunder, you can also get the support that makes it of staking, so that it works just the same as the volcanic fissure of snaking, which is very, very strong. For your tertiaries, determination obviously very good. Endure is very, very good. This gives you and them endurance charges. Val Vitality is fine, and that's about it. Molten Shell, sure, maybe. Burrow, you don't want. The thing is, though, that they are melee, so movement skills aren't the worst. Like, them having Leap Slam as their default is fine. But that's pretty much it for Earthshaker. All right, Eruptor. I need to scroll in a little bit here. So basically, this one is very good with snaking. You want Volcanic Fissure of snaking, and then after that, you probably would want Ashen Fissure, because this covers the enemies in Ash, which I think makes them take 20% more fire damage or something like that, and you're going to be giving a lot of fire damage. And then you do not want Tectonic Slam just because it has an H next to it. I assume it's going to have the same priority as Volcanic Fissure of snaking. And Consecrated Path probably is fine because it's got an M on here. I'm assuming that the Volcanic Fissure of snaking will take priority. But Consecrated Path also is a movement skill towards the enemies, so he'll probably just fly towards the enemies, and then again Volcanic Fissure of snaking. For your tertiaries, actually Herald of Ash is number one. This is just going to help clear. Like, it's going to make enemies blow up, right, and cause a burn around all of them, and that'll be quite nice. Determination and Purity of Fire are probably about equal. I'd say late game, if you were using this, you want your own Purity of Fire, so you'd want them to have Determination. But yeah, either one could work. Start a mapping. And that's actually it for Eruptor. There's not much to say. Okay, I just want to talk about Swiftblade quickly because I feel like with the right build, this guy could blow up a boss almost instantly. I think that on an Uber, the Val double strike might actually just be disgusting with the right supports. You would go with Flicker Strike because it has a cooldown as long as he doesn't have frenzies. And then for secondaries, you'd probably want to avoid dash. You do not want dash at all. Insight gives frenzies to you and the Merc, so that would be quite good. Pride would be quite good. Actually, Pride does Fizz, so you probably wouldn't care about Pride. You'd probably want Insight and Steel Skin Ally. Pride, I think, is that it's only they take additional Fizz. I'm just gonna look that up quick. Yes. So you definitely just want Insight and Steelskin ally. Leap Slam's probably fine. Leap Slam you probably could go. That's Swiftblade. All right, the last Merc I want to talk about is Combatant. Combatant, you you always have Herald of Ice, which means that instead of having the added fire on the rings, you actually want added cold. If you were to try and use this as your main Merc, um, so it's a little bit awkward. However, Frost Blades and Wild Strike both have projectiles. Um, I can't remember particularly how Wild Strike works, and I'm not going to go look it up right now. But I think whatever damage is the highest, no, it picks a random one. Um, but I don't remember if they're all projectiles. Spectral Helix might actually be projectiles too. And then Static Strike is just really, really good. Um, Static Strike, they will basically just activate it and then just keep frostblading, and Static Strike will just keep doing damage. And yes, Spectral Helix does count as projectiles, so these will all work in theory with whatchamacallit, with Sniper's Mark. But you want Frostblades probably more than you want Spectral Helix, just because the Merc likes to just stand too close, uh, and makes the Spectral Helix awkward. And then Wild Strike, I'd say, is the second best, but you always want Static Strike. Static Strike is very good for mobbing. Like I said, they will just activate it, and when you get to the point where you're giving your Merc a ton of damage, like with your Flame Link and all that, and you're just flying through an area, Static Strike will just keep zapping everything as you walk through, and it'll just kind of act like a mini Righteous Fire, I guess, and everything will die. Um, as for your tertiaries, you want Wrath and Purity of Ice. You do not want movement skills, particularly, though Frostblink's probably fine. I haven't played with this Merc a ton. Frostblink's probably fine just because he's melee, so he'll probably Frostblink in and then attack, as opposed to the range Mercs who will just Frostblink in and then just stand there for a second, then start attacking. Um, but yeah, having double aura obviously would be best case scenario.
All right, so now I just want to quickly go over my item sets that I made. These are literally just examples. These just give you the stats that you're kind of looking for on the items, and that's about it. Like, if you don't need resist, you don't need it on the item. But like the big priorities on this character are strength, life, and getting your resists maxed out, because early on purity of elements is not going to be enough to, max out your resists. Uh, Other than that, I don't think there is much for leveling. There's some attack speed on the shield and sword if you can happen to get it. I don't even think I ran a sword. But yeah, you're just wanting as fast of a weapon as possible just so that you can leap slam more. If you don't want to use a shield, you can use dual wield as well. And I guess in that way, maybe your smite will do more so you can help your merc more early on. Like if you just keep upgrading your weapons, you can help your merc more by spamming smite early. I did this as my second playthrough. If I would have kept up with my axe a little bit better, I probably could have kept smite on way later. Mid game, again, this is just kind of examples. We got two weapons that I kind of recommend that are easy enough to get. Singularity just slows all the enemies around you, which is just nice defensive. And then Sign of the Sin Eater gives you smite level 30, plus it gives you some strength. Obviously, you're wanting as high of strength as possible on this. And the level 30 smite is just nice because I think it gives almost a 30% chance to shock by default, which means that with all your increased aura effect, it probably is like a 60% chance for your merc to just get a shock, even if it's a low shock, right? So that's just nice. And then this shield obviously is just insane. You're not looking to get this crazy of a shield this early, but these are some of the stats you would want to look for. The main one being chance to block and life. And then moving on, you're looking to get your spell suppress capped. You do not need to have it on everything. Um, As you can see in this tree for level 60 to 74, I grab all these suppress things. This is just to make you tankier. The item, like as you get more items, like if you're lucky enough to get suppress, like if you're playing trade league, you probably can just get suppress capped quite easily, and then you can drop like this way over here. In my final build, I had this life here, um, but this would save you a lot of nodes, right? Traveling over to here, and then these nodes are much easier to grab since there's literally life right next to them. So if you get enough suppress somehow, I'd probably drop these ones, even though you're going to lose 3% suppress, um, just because that'll save you a lot of points. What else is there to say about the items? Endgame. I'm not going to go over this yet. I'll go over that in another section. So let's move on to the Merc gear. All right, so Merc gear. This is obviously right before I get to maps. This is one of my characters that I ran through before making the guide, just to try to make sure this guide was good. A decent item, I didn't actually iterate on during the earlier part of the guide, is an item that has basically, early on, it'll be 1 added damage. Later, it might be 2 added damage, and then very late, it'll be like 3 added damages to attacks. And as you can see, I crafted on attack speed because, in my opinion, 3,000 life is more than enough for your Merc going into early maps. But yeah, if you find an item that has life, maybe a resist, and an added damage, that is considered a decent item, and you would want to go ahead and craft your fire damage onto it. As for items you're looking for the Merc, the boots, you do not need move speed. The Merc is tethered to you, so I can just kind of show that quick. But basically, you do not need move speed at all. Your Merc will stay connected to you, so you can put your flame link on them, and they'll just keep following you, and they won't ever lose the flame link. Okay? So that's that. Body, again, res, life. Helmet, res, life. The quiver is, I usually just go for a bunch of added damage and attack. And the bow, attack speed is huge. I kind of realized that more towards the end. But obviously you still want those big added damages. Belt, life, res. You would want to use probably a rustic sash very early, but then you'd want to transition away from that and care more about life and stuff. All right, for the mid game, Mercs stuff and the end game, I decided to just make item sets instead of showing them in games because it'll just be faster. This is specifically for a Kineticist, but you can easily swap out the shield and the weapon for a bow and quiver, or 2 one-handed swords or claws, or a 2-handed axe, right? So what you're really looking for is, I think that the combo of Duresso's Defiance, Tenno Ahi, and Eye of Innocence is just really good. At this point, you'd be looking for Chaos Res, and you'd be looking for your implicits. I really like the enemies you've hit recently have reduced life regen. This just is really nice for both Maven and just incredibly tanky Soul Eater life regen mobs. So just really nice to have there, and the lowest level craft can go up to 67%, which is just pretty crazy. And the rest is just covering your resist. You want to make sure you get that chaos res, any other res they need in the mid game. If you can get it to added damage to attacks, that's really nice. It's not required at this point anymore. And you want a weapon with pen, attack speed, and crit if you can get it. I don't really know, like, I for 2-handed axes, I guess there's Nagamu's flame, which will not trigger the molten thing for your Merc, but you'll get the pen, the attack speed, and some good damage. For a ranged Merc, I guess you're forced to craft one that has pen with attack speed. You could probably ignore the crit at first. And for the Combatant, if you're using that, you kind of, again, be forced to craft
the weapon, but it's probably fine. I guess you could probably also use Rebuke of the Vow if you want on the combatant. But yeah, I just showed Kineticist. That's the one I know the most. But I definitely know that you could just literally swap out these two things for whatever Merc you're running, and it'll work. All right, endgame Merc. So again, just showing Kineticist, but you can obviously swap stuff out however you want. If you get gloves and a helmet with the accuracy rating, you probably could just ignore something like Lycoside or a Lionized Glare. But I'm just going to leave it here just because it makes everything easy, especially for a solo self-found player, because you'll end up getting a lot of Lycosides by the time you're getting stuff like Enlightens and whatnot. Um, so, the wand, again, attack speed, added damage, crit chance. That's all that matters. The pen doesn't matter anymore because this ring literally solves pen. You can add pen to it if you want that 0.5 or whatever the heck percent damage increase it's going to give. And then everything else is just focusing on fire res. And that's about it. I think the boots I changed to have fire res as one of the implicits and the onslaught on kill, but again, doesn't really matter. All you really care about is the fire res and life at this point in the game, just so that they don't fall over. I quickly added how to craft your Merc's endgame jewelry. This works on any item, technically. You can do boots, you could do a helmet, you could do gloves if you really wanted to. But the jewelry just seems the best place to put it. And I have a little blurb here. There's two options. The lazy option, which will take more tries, but it's way less effort. You don't have to grind Harbingers if you are playing solo self-found, because you can just use the predictable mode and select the Jun Fire and Chaos Res and the T1 Fire Res on the other item and just try to combine them every time. And eventually you will get it. I can't remember what the percent chance of doing that way is. I think it's a 10% chance. But yeah, you can do it that way. It will work eventually. There's the annul option. This is the harder one because you're gonna find veiled items that have a lot of mods, and you're gonna want to try to annul it down to just one prefix and one suffix, preferably. And so you'll have, whatever prefix. It does not matter. Like, yes, you would prefer to have like life and stuff, but who cares? And then one suffix, which is fire and chaos res. Then you're gonna alteration spam your other item. In my case, I was doing ruby rings. And you're gonna get T1 fire res and one prefix. And the prefix, preferably, is not going to be the same between the two items. I probably should add that. In fact, I'll add it now. So and this will be with unpredictable. And you're hoping for any of these outcomes, which makes it about, I think, a 50% chance-ish that you'll get the item you want. So 4 mod is like a 10% chance. 2 suffix is like I think 20 something percent, and then 1 prefix, 1 suffix is like something close to that too. So it ends up around 50%. It's not completely correct, but yeah, it's a pretty high chance you'll get it. And then after that, you will craft on hybrid fire and cold slash lightning. And that'll give you all 3 mods. Hybrid. Yeah. There you go. All right, I just want to make a quick ending here where I talk about how to actually navigate the build and how to play it. So this is both true for maps and for the campaign. Once you get Flame Link, all you're going to do is just make sure your Flame Link is on your Merc at all times. And so you're going to basically start the map, you throw Flame Link on them, and then you just start jumping, and since they're tethered to you, they'll just keep following you. And this is really good because what you'll notice when you're standing still with your Merc is that they actually stop attacking once in a while. But I've noticed if you keep tethering them by like pulling them along, they will continue to attack. They don't seem to have this problem. It must be something related to like the way that mobs are only allowed to attack so often, maybe. Um, I don't know. But then once you get to a tanky mob, you'll throw down your Pyroclast Mines or Pyroclast of Sabotage if you have that, and make sure you don't go down too low in your reservation so that you can still do stuff. You will also apply Sniper's Mark to that mob, and you can Val Haste if you want. Yeah, that's there. As for defensive layers, we have on my character, I had specifically Flesh and Stone in the Sand Stance at all times. The aura covers like I'd say at least 60% of my screen, so it was pretty good for taking less damage from enemies. And then I had Steel Skin. Eventually, I would have got enough reservation to add Tempest Shield as well, and I would have got the Life on Block Shield, so I would have been pretty freaking tanky. Um, of course, there's also all the Purities, which gives you a bunch of max res, and Purity of Elements, which gives you immunity to all elemental ailments, so you can't be frozen, shocked, or ignited, or chilled. Oh, and that also actually does include the brittle and whatnot, those other weird elemental ailments. So grabbing shrines that actually would cause an enemy to put Scorch on you, they just can't do that. So that's actually a really nice upside. But I think that's literally it for the build. The build's pretty easy. Leaf Slam into Frostblink into Leaf Slam is your like big movement ability thing. And then you got to remember that Frostblink's your instant movement skill. So if you're in something that's like lowering your action speed by a ton, you can use Frostblink to get out of it, and Leap Slam will not get you out of it. But I think that's literally it. All right, I'm just going to close off with some footage really quick of showing me running a Strand. There's no mods on this map, but I just wanted to show how fast the character can go through a map. And yes, I missed mobs, but I was just trying to demonstrate the character. With Domination Shrines, this character can go stupid fast, especially when you start getting stuff like Acceleration and Echo Shrines. And you can start doing some pretty crazy content, especially if you get a chest like I did with the Reflect mod. And it's just a lot of fun. I actually would say that this character is one of the better characters I've actually played. Like, not anywhere close to, you know, an armor stacker or something, but it was a lot of fun. I hope that some people enjoy playing this if they have time to play it before the league is over. And if anyone has any questions or I messed up the skill tree, please just leave a comment. The skill tree got kind of scuffed because POB crashed and had to redo a bunch of stuff that I didn't save, and I really hope it just is not scuffed. But with that said, thank you for watching. I'll see everyone in the next video.